Thanks for listening to the Elias Macko Show in the third hour of the program. We're with you until noon. Our first guest in this hour is none other than André Pratte, former senator. In fact, he was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in 2016. Now he's a communications consultant and a columnist, and he recently penned a piece for the National Post, which is quite scathing and goes after the Trudeau government and the Carney government. Here's the headline in the National Post: the Trudeau-Carney era's catastrophic mismanagement. Our pleasure to welcome André Pratte back onto the program. Monsieur Pratte, welcome back.
Good morning.
Now, listen, Trudeau named you to the Senate. How could you be so critical of him?
Well, as you know, I was appointed as an independent senator, not a Liberal senator. It was very important for me at the time, and I still am an independent. And from day one, actually, from the day I heard Justin Trudeau, then a candidate, that if the Liberal Party was elected in 2015, they would run, yearly deficits. Modest deficits is what Mr. Trudeau called them. I was concerned because once you remove the target of a balanced budget, then you open the floodgates to all kinds of spending, and this is exactly what happened during the Trudeau years and appears to be continuing now that Mark Carney is Prime Minister.
So, you write about, fiscal chaos and runaway debt. Why do you think in the 10 years with Trudeau and now under Carney, the party simply has been unable to rein it in?
Well, it's not easy to do this. I mean, you remember the days when Paul Martin was finance minister, Mr. Chrétien was prime minister, and cutting back on expenses, resisting requests for more finance, more programs, and so on. It's not easy. You need budget discipline. But my point is that you have to keep that discipline, because if you don't, then there's just no way to focus, all the departments, the officials, the politicians on the goal of balancing the budget. Obviously, during economic crisis, you can run deficits to stimulate the economy. But once you're back in good days, then you bring back the budget to balance. If you don't do that, you find yourself in exactly the situation we are now, which is uncontrolled deficits in Ottawa and increasing debt, and no sign that the federal government will go back to a balanced budget until we don't know. They don't have a date, so we have no idea. All we know is that the deficit will be much larger for this year when the budget is tabled next month. We know that the deficit will be much larger than what was announced in the last budget, and there's no sign that we'll ever get back to a balanced budget, certainly not during the Carney government.
And this leads me, I'm reading the last line of your piece in the National Post, and you're right. Unfortunately, the damage inflicted during the Trudeau-Carney era is so catastrophic that restoring Canada's fiscal health will require years of effort. It will also be extremely painful. Boy, that's a downer right there. Is there any indications that the latter half of that moniker of Trudeau-Carney, the Carney side of things, gets it and will turn things around?
Well, there's no sign of it. It may happen. As you know, Mr. Champagne, who's the new finance minister, has requested that every department find 15% of expenditures that can be reduced or eliminated. So we'll see how that turns out. But for now, what we know is that the projections by different, whether it's a parliamentary budget officer or CD Howe or other think tanks, their projections are for a deficit that this year will run over $90 billion. And there's no sign that this will go down because you have additional expenses for defense, as we know, and that's a thing I agree with, but also for all what the Carney government calls investments, but we don't know how those investments will be defined. What we know is that they'll be expensive.
Do you think it's fair here? Because, I noted in the piece, I noted just before, right? You use Trudeau - Carney, right? You tie them together. Some would say that's Poilievre-esque to attach those two names together now. And I've heard Mark Carney in the House of Commons, every time that's thrown at him, he likes to say, no, this is, my government and this is a new break here, right? So do you think it's fair and apt to tie those two names together?
Well, all indications are that expenses will continue to rise under Mr. Carney. And what worries me specifically is the fact that they're saying now we will balance what they call the operations budget. Now, this is new, and then we'll have those investments.
Yeah.
Now, this splitting the budget into expenditures in two, that's premier. We've never seen that before. And we don't know how that's going to turn out. What we do know is that when they do that, they obscure the real state of the government's finances. And there's a lack of transparency. It becomes very hard. And that's exactly what Mr. Trudeau and his finance ministers did in the days, obscuring the real situation so that it's difficult to grasp exactly how bad the situation is. So unless the budget on November 4th comes in and is very clear and transparent as to the state of the government's finances and a plan to, over the next few years, balance the budget, which is something that Chrystia Freeland, when she was finance minister, or Bill Morneau, when he was finance minister, never did. They gave us a plan to fiscal anchors, whatever that means, but never coming back to a balanced budget, which is what is needed.
Wrapping up here with André Pratte, a columnist. We're talking about the deficits and more, the runaway debt that's continued under Mark Carney here. Now, I want to throw this at you because I too have called with how they try and divide it, operational spending and investments. I've called that a bit of magical thinking on this program. I guess what I have to ask you is, we've seen the Liberals under Mark Carney. They've created some new offices. You mentioned the Defense Agency they just created this morning. We have the Major Projects Office. There's been a criticism that the response to everything is to create another agency, more bureaucracy, and not do what a lot of people call for, which is just get out of the way. What do you say to that?
Well, this is why I'm concerned, and I don't really see a difference between what this government is doing and what the previous government led by Justin Trudeau is doing. It's exactly the same kind of reflex. There's a problem, you create some kind of new agency, you hire new people, and as you said, the government should. I'm a believer in what government is doing. I believe in the fundamental role of governments. But there are instances where the answer does not come from the government. In any case, just to give you a sense, $55 billion is what the government will pay this year in interest. Yeah. Only interest. Yeah. $55 billion. Now, that's a lot of money that could be used either to balance the budget or to provide better services for Canadians. But it's only spent in interest, and it will only get worse in the next few years. I think that's a matter for concern.
There's been some talk that Mark Carney wants to push a few people out, get some by-elections, bring in some new people. Any thought that perhaps, Mark Carney's the leader, but he's still got the same old band. Is there any thought that, if you change a few more bodies, things can get better? Or is this sort of an endemic current state of the Liberal Party of Canada?
Well, I don't have an answer to that. I can tell you what I will be looking at in the next budget, because that will be a sign of whether things are turning around or not. And that will be the definition of what they call investment. Uh-huh. Whether is it real investment, like buying stuff that will become assets for Canada's economy and for the government to provide better services, or will it be just, ordinary spending, but put under the hat of investment? And that worries me, and we'll see whether the budget is transparent on that or not.
Yeah, that's cooking the books right there, right? That scenario. Mr. Pratte, we got to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thanks for inviting me.
That's André Pratte. You can read his piece in the National Post. It's called The Trudeau-Carney Era's Catastrophic Mismanagement.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.